Hey, good morning everybody. Welcome to Tight Line. We're glad that you're with us this week. I'm here with two new friends. This is my friend Brent, and he's a local pastor in our area. And this is his friend Chris, and he's marketing and social media director at their church. And we're at about a 13-acre private lake in middle Georgia on a good, nice overcast day. And we're hoping we're going to catch them real good today. So you guys stay with us. This particular lake on this particular day, man, it was a perfect condition for throwing top water baits. Now, what do I mean when I say that? Well, you always want to have kind of low light when you're throwing a top water bait, and it'd been hot, so we were there on an early morning. It was an overcast day. It stayed overcast for several hours, and so our thoughts were, man, we're going to really catch them good on the top water today, but we actually didn't. In fact, I caught my first fish on a Bandit 100 square bill crankbait in a root beer color. Some days they just won't hit what you want them to hit. Uh-oh, that's my coffee. You know when they eat it like that, Brent, that's the right bait. Look how he ate it down in there.
That's nice.
It's just a little square bill Bandit 100 crankbait, and we probably threw top waters for 10 or 15 minutes, and it just didn't feel right to me. So I picked this up, and he got it good. Would you?
Decent pliers.
Yeah. Man, that's for reaching down in their gullet, isn't it?
That is.
And I can unhook Chris's fish with these pliers.
I'll let you.
That's awesome.
I'm telling you. After that Ace Clinic incident.
Oh, that's why you got the long ones, huh?
Yes. That was a bad day that day.
We're gonna let him go and get bigger. He's still red on the fins right there. What you got?
Oh, don't
Yes, sir.
Man, these things are aggressive. I love it.
Throwing a lizard. It's a 9-pounder and a 2-pounder body. I think you got him foul hook. No, you don't.
He's got something stuck in him too. I mean, he's been hit by something.
Look at that crazy fish.
Check that side right there.
2.5-pounder. Something bit him, didn't it?
Sure did.
Nice, man. Good job.
Thank you, sir. Dang, bro.
Oh, Brent, he's clearing out the little ones for you.
Man, they are
getting out of the way.
I can't get over the fighting of these little suckers. These are awesome.
So here's the cool part about today. You come in with a mindset of, hey, here's how we're going to catch them. Top waters, crankbaits, because it's overcast and cool. But Chris is behind us back here whacking them on
the old
lizard.
faithful lizard.
So we're going to try that. Yeah, Brent broke the ice.
You don't want to miss it. You got a net?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I got
Man,
you too.
I left my net
I
at
don't know
home.
what was pulling harder. Chris's line.
Chris is trying to.
I know. I saw it. I was like, man, that feels weird.
You're trying to use yours for bait.
Yeah.
So here's a lesson in fishing. I'm up here trying to make them bite what I think they ought to bite. Chris is back there whacking them on a lizard.
I just love that they're aggressive.
That's cool, isn't it? They hadn't caught any real big ones yet, but boy.
I love it.
A lesson I'm continually learning when I'm fishing is sometimes what you think is going to happen and what does happen are two different things. Thought it was going to be a great topwater bite that day, but it wasn't. In fact, Chris caught 3 or 4 nice ones on a bottom bumping lizard. But then something pretty cool happened at this lake. A feeder went off that feeds the brim. And we saw that happening and realized that the bass would probably come feed on the brim. So we were situationally aware and made sure that we went over and fished around that feeder. There he is. I got a brim. No, that's a bass. If you're ever on a pond and it has a feeder and you see that feeder go off, you think it's just brim, you should always take the opportunity to swing around there and fish around it because probably the bass are under there feeding on the brim. Got him? Attaboy. Nice, nice. We'll help you with that one. Brent said, I'm gonna try that rattle trap. He's got a real nice fish. And he's doing a good job wearing him out. I didn't bring a net, so we're gonna try to keep these treble hooks out of my fingers. I'm gonna help you. Just get it. Ooh.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
Oh yeah.
Open up, Bessie. Come here, come here, come here. There you go. Nice. Good one there, brother. That was awesome.
That is a good one.
I love it.
Now, Brent, is that I think that's a red-eye shad, isn't it?
It is.
And
I don't know if you need to.
I got him. Big old good one. That's about a 5.5 or 6 pounder. I'm gonna let you do the honors.
Awesome.
And look, I don't know if y'all can see that real good, but that tail's still red. It's May in Georgia. And that fish probably hadn't been off the bed 2 weeks.
Wow.
Which is unusual for down here.
And that's
awesome.
Pretty.
That is pretty.
A pretty fish.
Good job, brother. When you find yourself in a situation where fish are feeding on bait, whether it's brim or shad or whatever, a great bait to throw is a rattle trap. We caught a couple of them around the feeder, but we also caught some nice fish on rattle traps away from the feeder also. So Brent, your dad's a local pastor also, right?
He is.
How did y'all get into fishing? Did he always fish, or how'd that happen?
Not really. He took me deer hunting one time, and I got hooked. I just fell in love with it. So he probably regrets it. I was waking him up at 4 in the morning every chance I could to go deer hunting. And so to hold me over from deer hunting, he bought a little fishing ski boat.
Yeah.
And man, we would wear it out. So he got me into it, and I've been hooked on it ever since.
How about you, Chris?
My granddad had a place on the backwaters on Hardin, so just about summer I was either skiing or fishing, and then kind of just fell off for a little while until I had a kid, and then my son picked it up and we did it for years. He kind of got me back into it. Same thing, take some of that time off from hunting when I'm not able to.
I got one. I got it. I threw that little crankbait up there that kind of looks like a brim. I may have a brim actually. No, it's a bass. It's not near as big as Mr. Brent's, but it's a nice one.
I was holding out for the
Yeah,
big
you
fish.
were waiting the whole time, weren't you?
Yeah.
And when you see a bunch of brim feeding on top, you can just about count on the bass aren't going to be far behind. That's a nice one
fish,
anywhere.
He is pretty.
They're just not as big as yours. That's a real good way to get them too. If you don't have a net and they got a mouthful of trebles, if you'll squeeze a bass on the plates of the gills, it paralyzes them just like holding it in the bottom jaw. That way we don't go to the emergency room.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that tip.
Where'd those pliers go?
Right behind you.
And Brent can tell you
Got the longest, I hold the record for the longest set of.
what store to buy these 3-foot pliers at. That's awesome. I'm glad
I started
he got
looking
them.
right after the Ace Clinic experience.
He got hooked one time and decided he didn't want to be very close to him. That's 2.5, 3 pounder.
It's pretty.
I'm throwing a little Bandit 100 square, we call them square bill crankbaits. Why do we call them that? Because the bill is square. We're pretty simple people. And this is called root beer. It's kind of a brim color. He was right in that stuff, wasn't he?
He sure was. But if we're going to do it, we're going to go after church, unchurched people. We're never going to go after church people. And that's just been, you know, it's been the biggest thing for us, you know. Because there's plenty of unchurched people out there that need to hear the gospel.
You're right about that.
That's a decent fish right there.
He's not bad.
Nice. So what we're doing is trying to figure out these crazy fish that ought to be just munching on top or hitting a moving bait today, but it seems like they want something. Maybe they're sleepy. They want something slow moving.
All right.
Good job, man.
Go tell your big brother.
He said, okay. You guys work at Cascade Hills Church. It's a great church, and I think a lot of times the mindset of y'all's church is a little different than most churches. Kind of tell us what's unique about how you guys do things there in your mind.
I think what's so unique about what we do is we are really focused on reaching the unchurched. So we're actually, our slogan is the church for the unchurched.
Okay.
So that's our market, because Jesus said, go out and seek and save that which is lost.
Right.
He said that the Son of Man came to seek and save that which is lost. So we figure if that's Jesus' mission, that should be ours too.
Yeah, it's pretty good mission.
And there's plenty of lost people. There's plenty of people that have not heard the gospel of Jesus and the relationship he wants to have with them. And so that's our market. And everything we do through social media or events or everything we do, we ask the question, is this line up with the vision? Is this reaching the unchurched? If not, we don't do it, because we could waste a lot of time doing a lot of different programs that aren't reaching people. And so that's our focus. And that comes from my father, who's been the pastor there for over 35 years, his salvation experience. You know, he was lost, aimless, 17-year-old boy, and somebody knocked on his door and said, everything you're looking for can be found in Jesus. And he thought, well, that's random. You know, and it got in his head like a bad song. And he said, I couldn't get it out. And 2 weeks after that, he was actually stabbed multiple times, severed his jugular vein. He's one of the only people that's lived without a jugular vein. Should have died, but he grabbed onto a light pole in a parking lot a couple blocks away from the hospital. Says, God, I don't know you, but I have these words in my mind that everything I'm looking for can be found in Jesus, so would you save me? Came into his life, and he's used that now. That's kind of the DNA behind the church. Everything we do is to reach that unchurched person like he was.
And you know, a lot of y'all out there think, well, we're just a small country church, or we've only a handful of people. The mission's the same whether you're 20 people or 2,000 people, and that's actually, from what I understand, how you guys started. It was really little community neighborhood church.
He got called to preach, and he's started when he came to the church. There was 32 people. They're all upset with each other, and it was a little bitty church, and he was probably the least likely person that should ever be a pastor. But yet God called him.
That's very cool. So a lot of times we overcomplicate what Jesus tells us to do, and the sad part is, you guys, we as church people, we get a little too focused on what's not important, the color of the carpet in the church or the kind of music, and that's not what it's about. It's about reaching people for Jesus, however we need to do that. So
that's right.
We appreciate what you guys do. Brent was sharing Brother Bill's story, and it's just an amazing story. If you ever get a chance to hear the whole thing, you should listen to it. But what it said to us was, man, God can use anybody. He can use the least of us to share his word with other people, and that was very clear from listening to Bill's story. Nice.
Maybe they're just waking up now.
You didn't even grunt or anything, man.
I mean,
is that an 8-pounder?
Exactly.
No, that's the funny thing.
He is a healthy fish, so all these fish in this pond are real nice and healthy and fat. Show our buddies out there that fish, Chris. That's a nice one.
That's nice.
Fishermen are kind of notorious for being storytellers. Now, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but man, we love stories. I love to hear stories about fishing. I've got a whole bunch of stories about fishing. I can remember times that things amazed me in my life. There was a time when I caught a fish one time on a crankbait at a lake, and another fish came up and hit it. So I actually had 2 fish on one crankbait, and it pulled the hook out of the backside and only caught one of the fish. That's typically how it works. There's a time in my life when a friend of mine and I went fishing, and he went back to cast and hooked me in the ear, and we got to go to the hospital and get that hook removed. And there's just all kind of stories that I remember from fishing. And that's kind of how the day was today too. It was Brent sharing his story with me, and Chris sharing his story with me, and me sharing my story with them. And then Brent sharing the story of his dad and the miracle of him coming to know Christ, and really the miracle of Christ saving his life. But the thing I want to encourage you guys in today is this, man, we all have a story. Those of us that know Christ, we have a story. And proof of that is in Ephesians chapter 2, verses 4 and 5. Listen to what your story is. It says this: "But because of His great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ even when we were dead in our transgressions. It's by grace you have been saved." So what that says to me is, man, I was dead and I was raised back to life. So I've got a story to tell, and we all have a story to tell. In fact, there's a guy in the Bible named Paul that has a pretty amazing story. He was one of the baddest dudes in the New Testament. He actually killed Christians and put them in prison, and then he met Christ and his whole life turned around. And he gives us a real model for sharing our story with other people in Acts chapter 22. Basically what he does is defends himself at a trial. Tells about what his life was like before Christ, how he came to know Christ, and then what Christ did in his life after that. I mean, that's a great model for us to share our story with other people. What was my life like before I came to know Christ? How did I come to know Him? And then, probably most importantly, what Christ is doing in my life right now to make my life better, to change my life. And so you have a story to tell. And man, you never ever think that you're a person that can't be used by God, because Paul, who is the worst of the worst sinners, was used by God to become one of the greatest preachers, one of the greatest evangelists, one of the greatest missionaries of all time. And you may be sitting there tonight too, and Christ is not a part of your story. You may think, well, I've done too much wrong, or I've been too bad for Christ to redeem my life or turn my life around. And man, Paul's a great example of how wrong that way of thinking is. Christ can redeem anybody. That's why He came and gave His life for you and me. And so tonight, if Christ, if God is not a part of your story, it's just as simple as, man, admitting you're a sinner, believing what Christ did for you on the cross, and asking Him to come and live in your heart and be Lord of your life. So if you're sitting there in your living room or in your den tonight and you want to ask Him in, just pray a real simple prayer like, "Dear God, I know I'm a sinner. Would you forgive me of my sins? And would you come and live in my heart and be Lord of my life?" And then your story will be the amazing miracle of coming from death back into life. Hey, thanks so much for listening tonight. Hey guys, what we do at Go Fish Ministries is share the gospel and encourage believers in their walk with Christ. We do this through a variety of events such as wild game dinners, kids camps, men's events, music events, or even if you or someone you know just needs a day on the water. Go Fish Ministries wants to point you toward Jesus and help you know Him better. Contact us through our website. We'd love to serve you any way we can. God bless you and go fish. I think today what we're seeing, these guys are throwing black red, I'm throwing a June bug, but when we were throwing the greens, we weren't getting bit quite as much, I think. So this water's not dirty, but it's not clear either. And that's kind of a little rule of thumb. When you can't see below about a foot, go with a darker color. But if you got 18 inches or 24 inches of visibility, go with a more natural color.
That's pretty colored in too.
Mm-hmm.
Can't wide lens.
There he is, I got one. That's a better, well, no, it's not. So we're watching our electronics out here. There's tons of cover in this lake, but it's cloudy and overcast. We can't get them to bite a top water, so we start throwing some rattle baits, and just that quick we catch two. We just got to find their moms and grandmas. Hey Brent, you grew up as a preacher's kid. Tell me a little bit about your story, about how you came to know Christ and maybe what He's doing now in your life.
Sure. Yeah, I grew up in the church, and I came to know Christ when I was 11th grade in high school.
Oh wow.
I know that sounds late. I knew all about God. I bought into the fire insurance deal. I didn't want to go to hell or anything like that. But 11th grade, I'm at a youth summer event, and the guy speaking is talking about the importance of Him not only being your Savior, but Lord. And it hit me. I thought, that's me. And I had doubts and thought, I know of God, but I don't know Him personally like this guy speaks of.
Yeah.
And of all things, 11th grader in high school, everyone knows I'm the preacher's kid. had to put down my pride and say, you know, I don't have a personal relationship. I know of him, but knowing of him and knowing him personally is two different ball games. And so I gave my life to God that night, and that's really when I started a personal relationship with him. My mom was a big prayer warrior. She taught me how to pray. So my mother woke up every morning that I didn't wake up, that she wasn't up at 5 in the morning praying.
I'm sorry this fish is interrupting you, man.
Man, no. I'll take it right now.
Come here, bro. Even the small ones look real good, though.
They do.
Nice. Anyway, you were telling me about your mom being a prayer warrior.
Yeah, she's kind of showed me by her life how to pray, and that's when I really grew in my relationship with God, when I learned the importance of prayer and the power of it. And
he wants to be personal with you, that's for sure. We realize that more and more every day, how he speaks to us through his word, through prayer and stuff like that. That's awesome.
He does.
And that's an encouragement for you guys too. 11th grade may not sound very old, but for a kid that's been in church all their life, that's older. And so that's an encouragement to you guys too. You're never too old to ask Jesus into your heart. It's never too late. And so that's, if you've been in church all your life or you hadn't, if you've never asked him into your heart and have a personal relationship with him, that's what he wants. A lot of y'all might have him here, but you need to have him here, right?
Yeah, they say most people miss heaven by 18 inches between your head and your heart.
Difference from here to here. Well, thanks, man. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Oh, absolutely.
That's a little better
He had
fish.
a good weight behind him.
Yeah, he hit it. I
coming right
never
towards
felt him. He was running straight at me. And he choked at me. I can't even see the bait down in his mouth. I picked up this jig, and about the third cast, this fish ate it, but he ate it so aggressively, I think he came toward me with it. And I never felt him. I just saw my line swimming. And if you can ever get one to look like that, you know they're eating right.
That's right.
This is just a buckeye. It's called a mop jig. The reason they call it a mop jig is because it's real thick. So Chris, it sounds like you've been active in church most of your life too. Tell me a little bit about your story, how you came to know the Lord.
Mine's a lot like Brent's.
Okay.
My dad's a pastor, so I'm a PK.
Okay.
And it's true, I was bad. But I grew up in church same way. Knew God, had him in my head, just never had him in my heart for a long time. Accepted Christ probably at a young age at 6. But I truly believe that was just a thing to do as a pastor's kid,
Right.
Really young.
What you're supposed to do.
That's right, exactly. And it was later in life, it was actually after I got married that I really felt that tug that God was wanting more of a relationship with me instead of just me filling a pew every week. And I was, I was 23, and we had just come to Cascade, and heard a Wednesday night actually, which we don't even have a Wednesday night anymore. But Pastor, that's what was so incredible. Pastor, he does an invitation at every service, which is incredible, and that was just one of those nights. It was just a basic prayer meeting. Did an invitation, and same thing. I just didn't have that relationship, and had to make that final, so I knew exactly. I needed to be 100% sure.
That's awesome.
So it's, but yeah, growing up in church all my life. So
Chris has been on fire for God ever since then. He's served in every capacity since then, and he's just one of those guys. Chris networks with people and knows just about everybody. But Chris has got incredible. His life is a great testimony. His kids just turned out right, and he's phenomenal.
Well, that's you look at people's lives, and it says, the Bible says by their fruit you'll know, and fruit isn't necessarily always winning souls. It's just how you live your life and people knowing that you're different. And that's how we're supposed to live. It's kind of an upside down thing to what the world is. We're supposed to look different.
That's right.
That's cool, man. That's awesome. One thing we as fishermen do is a lot of times we get in our brain, hey, we're going to catch them a certain way. This particular day, I'm thinking top water baits, fast moving baits, it's overcast, the fish should be chasing, but clearly they weren't. And then I remembered one of the gentlemen that helps manage these ponds told me that They had been catching them on jigs earlier in the week. So I tied on a green pumpkin colored 3/8 ounce Buckeye mop jig and put a green pumpkin speed crawl on for a trailer and dyed the claws just a little bit chartreuse. And I started catching some real nice ones on it. So about 6 casts with the jig and 2 pretty good bites. Maybe they're gonna start liking this jig. We couldn't figure out how to make them hit a moving bait, so we just keep throwing right bottom baits, and this jig had to be down there. Why don't you come in the boat? There we go. That's a nice one. Boy, these fish look really good in here. And that did just like it's supposed to do. It hit him right in the top of the mouth, hooked him real good.
That's
about
pretty.
a 3.5,
Very pretty.
maybe 4. Let her get bigger. Big one too.
Nice.
Yeah. On the jig.
All right, I'm about to go to the jig.
Look right where it was supposed to be too, right in the top. That may be a good one right there. Nice.
Wow.
And that's a pretty fish, y'all.
Yeah, it is.
Sure is.
Come here, buddy. Oh, that thing keeps hitting my knee. Look at that.
Wow. Yeah.
Pretty.
If you're getting a lot of bites on a worm and you're in a pond or something, put that worm down and start throwing a jig. Thank you, Laura.
That's a pretty fish.
Today's been kind of an unusual day. It would be the kind of day that's textbook, top water, moving bait. But what we found is you just got to kind of listen to the fish. And today they're not hitting on moving baits. They're hitting on bottom bumping baits. And so that's what we kind of experimented with. And we ended up catching them on jigs and lizards and bottom baits. So if you're ever at a lake and you just try to keep an open mind, I guess is what I'm saying. Don't be closed in on one particular technique. Hey, thanks so much for being with us today. We had a great day fishing. Kind of had to fish a little different than we thought we were gonna, but ended up having an awesome day. So I want to thank Brent and thank Chris for being with us today.
Yeah.
We appreciate it so much.
We had a blast. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for
Thank
inviting
you so
me.
much.
Absolutely,
We
we'll
had a
do it
blast.
again.
Sounds like a plan.
Man, we had a great day on the water, catching a lot of fish and also encouraging each other in the Lord and listening to each other's stories. So just thanks so much for being with us. I want to thank y'all also for being with us today. We're excited about season 2 of Tightline. So you guys stick with us. We're excited about the season ahead. Thanks for joining us.